Hey Deckers, Fallout 4 was 10th on our most played games on Steam Deck for 2022, so we thought we'd make sure that we have some better coverage of it, and I can certainly see the appeal here. This is an absolutely fantastic looking game with tons of content, so we thought we'd look at the medium and high settings here to see which runs best on Steam Deck. On the left here you've got the medium settings and on the right on high. And apart from the frames per second difference here, you're going to struggle to see much of a difference. There's a bit more definition in the sky, and Red Rocket and the sign here are definitely a little bit clearer. But other than that, I don't see a huge amount of difference. Now this really becomes apparent when we look at some of the scenes later on, but when we go inside the building here, you'd expect that frames per second to go up. Whereas on the high version, it actually comes down here. And again, there is very little, if any, difference in the graphics here at all. So as we come full screen then with medium, with the minigun at full whack and combat in motion with lots of lighting effects, we do get dipped down into the 50s here. So it's not holding a perfectly steady 60 frames per second, but it does stay up there for the most part. Whereas when we come into the high version, even before we start firing, we're already into the 40s and 50s. And once we start firing as well, we are much more firmly into the 40 frames per second. Now this gets even worse when we go up onto the top and start looking out over the areas here, especially even with the transition upstairs, we even dip down into the 30s. So high really is a huge impact on the frames per second here, and also the battery life. Look at the wattage, we're sitting between 22 and 28 watts of usage depending on the area that we're looking at. So that does get quite intense. And again, looking out over the environment, we get some big stutters as well, and drops down even below the 30 frames per second mark in some cases. So it's really not a fantastic experience. If you're going to use high, I would suggest that you cap that in the 40 Hz mode, but you're still probably going to dip down into the 30s on occasions. As if we look at the same area on medium, we do still get a few dips below the 60 mark, even down into the 30s very briefly on some of those loading spikes. But for the most part, even when we've got all of the terrain out, we are holding over 50 frames per second and back up to that 60 most of the time. So it's not a perfect 60, but the default medium settings here definitely are producing an extremely good experience. And with the very little difference between the medium and high on the graphics, as you'll notice, then I would recommend keeping this on the default medium. And if you want to make it super smooth, then I would suggest that you cap this at 50 Hz on the Steam Deck to get a little bit more out of the battery life, and also to just make that experience slightly smoother. Be sure to check out the top 10 most played games on Steam Deck of 2022, and also how to upgrade your Steam Deck with Decky Loader. I'll leave you with a bit more of the gameplay here without me talking on the medium settings, so you get a better feel for the game and performance. Thanks for watching, and enjoy the rest of the video.